Who's really sinning?
They should really just rename Mario Party Jerk Off Simulator.
Jerkbox, come on.
Welcome back, Legion. It's just Baldur's Gate 3 became so much the zeitgeist of the gaming community that, like,
Yeah.
even if you didn't own the game, you know almost everything there is to know about these characters.
Well, oddly enough, you could even just rate them on, like, the horniness. You know what I mean? Because that is how most of us rate them anyway.
Most of the people played it as a dating sim, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why Lae'zel is up top, because she's amazing. Oh, right? Tell me about what?
I just like the voice actress. Oh, my goodness.
Well, I'm Googling that now. Fucking hell.
Hey, if they came up to me and said, hey, look, we want you to voice AMKomnenos, I'd do it. That'd be my whole thing.
Come on, let's hear it then. Let's hear it.
Well, it'd be my own take on it.
Oh, right.
It wouldn't be anything like you at all.
Howdy, y'all.
This is my Legion. Isn't it good?
You know how Cobb starts off every episode by going, yeehaw!
Yeah.
Before we begin, the Gamer's Advocate would like to remind you that any episode could contain game spoilers, so watch or listen with discretion. And now your hosts, AMKomnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to another one of our podcasts of the Gamer's Advocate. We're joined today with...
Hold on, I'm still looking up my opinions.
We're joined with...
Am I funny? It says no.
Yeah, I looked at the comments. Nope.
We are joined with the unfunny BananaHammockRepublic and the sometimes funny AMKomnenos and the always funny
And the black hole of comedy, Legion.
We, in fact, are going to be discussing comedy topics in gaming. And really, you know, one thing I noticed is that there's several games that have comedy in them. And they're not always intentional, but you remember them when they happen. And one of the hardest things to really pull off is comedy, because it doesn't always translate in every single type of medium. I mean, different types of art actually integrate some comedy, and even high art, you'll see it. Mozart was notorious for talking about body parts in a lot of his stuff. He wrote them into a lot of his operas, because when it was like translated from German, if he said it a certain way, it sounded something pretty lewd. So he knew this. And so there's a lot of comedy that goes on, even when we think of like high art and stuff, but it's very hard to kind of pull off when you're trying to do it intentionally. Games is one of those that I really, when I see them, I notice them, and they don't always work. Like when they try to be funny, they don't always succeed. I can very specifically remember there was quite a few times in Veilguard where I was like, it's not that funny, but I'm here for the ride, so I gotta laugh, I guess. I'm in the car, you know. They're gonna drop me off if I don't just keep going with them, you know. So, but I will say, in the original Baldur's Gate titles, there was so much times where I was just like, this is hilarious. The talking sword, Minsk going off being Minsk, you know. He has a talking freaking hamster, a space hamster, you know. Just those little things are just absolutely hilarious. Even Diablo, you know, I played a lot of Diablo, and my favorite characters and you'll like this, Com, are the fetishes. And
go on.
The little fetishes in Diablo 2 where you're in the jungle, and they're right on each other's shoulders, and they come at you with like these knives that are as big as they are, and if you knock one off, then the other one comes and still tries to attack you at your knees and stuff, and they shout out this thing like, Rakanishu, and it tends up just being like this rare boss well, it's not rare, it's just the first named boss that you run into, but just those little things are just so funny. And they're not really, like I said, always intended to be funny, but just the scene itself, because Diablo's so serious and there's so much going on and it's so captivating. And you got these little guys trying to bite your ankles. But what, you guys have any games that you can think of that maybe are off the top of your head?
Yeah.
Well,
But there's two very different tones. There are games that are funny, and then there's games that in moments are funny, or they have these moments that make you laugh. So I was making a few very quick notes of just series that came to mind. The first one was a series which is meant to be funny most of the way through, which is Fallout. Fallout is full of incredibly funny lines. Particularly New Vegas, I think they've really hit the ground. I will always just remember that beautiful moment of they asked me, do I have a degree in theoretical physics? I responded saying, yes, I do have a theoretical degree in physics. Beautiful. Just it's outstanding work. Hitman, which I think is just inherently funny. I don't know if it was meant to start off that way, but when they realized what their physics was doing, my goodness. And if you go back now and you play the challenge runs and completionist runs of the Hitman trilogy, the modern day one, it's all stupid. And it's all wonderful, and I would do nothing to change it. And I think they're meant to be funny all the way through. And you can probably pop Yakuza on there as well, which is really a special kind of funny. Then you've got games which are maybe a bit more serious. Not serious, but more serious. And then they have their moments. So The Elder Scrolls, I think, isn't meant to be funny all the way through, but they have their moments. And I always remember just laughing out loud at the quest in Oblivion where there's the rats in the cellar. And then you go in there and the lady actually doesn't want you to kill the rats. She wants you to save the rats, which have been attacked by some mountain lion. It's beautiful. That little turn on the head that you didn't see coming as you expect yet another. Really? Rats? Am I doing this again? So just that moment in the game. And then there's a special kind which I think only exists in gaming, which is when your game is so shit that it's funny. And my favorite one, I don't know if anyone's going to know this one, shout out to you if you do, was by a solo producer of wrestling video games called M. Dickey. And he made a series of wrestling games, one of which was Wrestling Empire, M like his name, well done. And it's shit, but it's wonderful. Nothing works the way it's supposed to, but he made it into a complete goofy sandbox. Wrestling Empire, I am putting it out there right now, is the funniest game ever made. I don't care if Portal's got better jokes, it's not as funny as Wrestling Empire.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely nailed it with those like kind of two categories where, you know, a game like Borderlands, that series, there's a lot of humor in Borderlands. There's a lot of absurdity in Borderlands, and then that kind of sprinkled comedy over top of that where, you know, the characters will actually have funny lines and there will be humor in observation. There will be like genuinely clever comedy throughout that game. Borderlands does a really good job of kind of running the gambit of deliberate comedy. Games like, you know, Sonic Boom or Sonic Adventure DX, that's not deliberate comedy, but that's fucking hysterical. The idea that somebody made a game where you play as Sonic characters. All right, now you're going to play as Big the Cat and you're going to go fishing and you're going to try and catch a frog who is not interested in whatever you have on your lure. Like, that's not a game anymore. That's just torture. And it's hilarious if it's happening to somebody else. And those experiences are everywhere in video games where that accidental comedy really shines through. And I think to a certain degree, like, you'll see it in those really, really well-respected series as well. If you think back to the original Legend of Zelda game, where you meet people in caves and they give you critical information for completing your journey. Like, go to the graveyard at night. You live in a cave. Why am I listening to you? You are not qualified to be giving life advice.
Yeah.
If you just kind of ignore that immersion of, you know, I'm in an epic quest, and you just look at these things pragmatically, they're sometimes absolutely hysterical.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of that in comedy in gaming.
A lot of those titles back in the NES days were just like that. They didn't have to make sense. And the premise alone was just stupidly funny. One of my favorite games was Blaster Master. Let me tell you the premise of Blaster Master. So, what you did was you were this kid who had a frog. And the frog escapes. He goes down this hole. For some reason, there's a hole there. Well, no, there's there's some radioactive barrels behind the house for some reason. So the frog finds that.
Naturally.
Yeah, and then it goes down a hole, and then you go down and follow your favorite frog, and then there's some tank that's down there, and then you start like, weaving through the like a Metroid type, Metroidvania type thing, and that's the premise. You're chasing your radioactive. Yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous.
I definitely feel like there were a lot of in that kind of retro category now. A lot of like those earlier games where the premise is just so absurd, but you just accept it. You just roll with it because we were doing a lot of really crazy stuff when gaming was first developed as an industry. We were just trying a lot of fun things, and some of those things make no sense and still made for great games. Some of them not so much.
I think you see a lot of it in the sort of self-made, those little indie projects you get coming out of the UK in particular in the 80s and the 90s. There's a lot of very weird little premises that are put there. I think it's just because we had so little that we could actually do game-wise, and the average hobby programmer making a game at home isn't going to come up with a brand new interesting game mechanic. They're not going to. They're going to make a clone of Space Invaders. They're going to make a clone of Pac-Man, wherever it might be. And the only way that they can really put their personality in the game is to make it funny in some way, to give it a premise which makes you think, oh yeah, why not? I will play that. Sure, I've played Space Invaders before, but I don't want to play this clone called, Star Attackers 2. I don't want to play that. But hold on, what's this? Beat 'em and eat 'em. I'm in. It was your only way of getting that game out there. And it was something we needed. Whereas now, I don't think you find that true absurdism very often in gaming anymore. There was one fairly recently that I've forgotten the name of, which I'll remember in a few seconds. But that's a rare beast nowadays, where you used to find that was a huge part of indie video gaming in particular. And you still get some of it. I think was it the designer of Stardew Valley or Five Nights at Freddy's who made the game called Fart Hotel a few months before the game came out, which was essentially just you were shown a hotel, someone farts, and you have to guess who it was. I think it was the Five Nights at Freddy guy. And yeah, and this was just his way of making a really simple game that people might want to play. Obviously, no one did, but it was his way of trying to do that. Did you find it, Banana? I saw you Googling.
Was it Thank Goodness You're Here?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I know that one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that game, Thank Goodness You're Here, is a very individual game.
Yeah.
In a day like this. But I think there was a time when games of that style were much, much more common, particularly in that indie boom heyday back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. I always thought the characters looked like Little Miss Sunshine and things like that from the 80s.
They didn't speak like it, did they?
Yeah, no.
There was a book series for children that really looked exactly like the same style.
This is same one that I was talking about, Little Miss Sunshine, or
is
Little
that what
Miss,
it was?
yeah.
I just remember each of the like characters having a unique name, and I didn't know Little Miss Sunshine, but like I do remember a lot of them just being very weird. And then seeing that art style now, I was just like,
yeah,
those people branched out. Like, this is not what I was expecting.
It is interesting that back when the NES and there was a little bit more absurdity and stuff, I guess they didn't think that people would be captivated by the whole, like, let's learn the whole lore behind things like they do now. Like now there'll be like a 20-minute cinematic trailer just to lay down a foundation of a story that really is convoluted to begin with.
Yeah.
So now, like I said, now they can't let you just do that now. We can't just make up a stupid story and then maybe you'll like it. The gameplay should sit on its own. I guess you won't ever run into like a situation like Tetris where we know all the Tetris pieces' names, but we don't have to, right? Now we kind of have to be spoon-fed all this information about the game in order to think that that's the only way we'll appreciate the game. So it's kind of done a 180 on that. And so that it doesn't lose humor along the way. It just seems to want to rely on, this is the way we want you to play the game.
I still don't know those names. I remember them coming up in our very first episode. Something I do very much like in modern gaming when it comes to, well, joking, is how easy it is now in a lot of modern games to have multiplayer. And this is where, honestly, most fun stuff is going to come from in a game.
Yeah.
As well scripted as a game can be, as well crafted as a joke can be, it's very rarely as funny as that one friend of yours who's the funny guy in your group. You know, that person is almost always funnier than every professional comedian who's ever existed, even if they're objectively not funnier than that professional comedian. And those big worlds that now exist have given us this wonderful opportunity to just joke around with each other. And you can see the earliest evolution of this back in the days. And the one I remember is Project IGI, when you could fire your gun into a wall and it would leave bullet holes. And the big question was always, will there be enough holes for me to draw a cock? Will there? Will there? And there never was. And you had to try all different shapes and you couldn't do it. And then finally a game came out and there was enough that you could do that. And now we're in the online world and I can leave a dick on that wall. And I can leave a dick on that wall and someone's going to come around the corner and they're going to see it. And it's just like drawing one in a parked car in the snow. Now, that is so important because it's this wonderful bonding experience for everyone as we play this game. And this made me sad recently because I was playing Elden Ring. I say recently, it was like 2 years ago. And there was a character dead. Not NPC, but just a fixture of the background. And they have fallen. So their torso has fallen over a railing and their legs are still on your side, meaning that their butthole is perfectly exposed. So naturally, you go up to it and you leave a message on the ground with the letters available to you and you write, "Try finger butthole." You see, perfect. Every time you see this, you laugh, you're happy, everything's great. I went up to one and you're ready to upvote. Oh, this is going to be funny again. And I went up to one and someone had written "enemy ahead." And I just worry that we're losing some of our values as a society when I see things like that.
Yeah, no, I
We've desynced.
Yeah, so
I feel like
downvote. No,
like if I load up Dark Souls 1 and I get to Guinevere and there's not a message that says "amazing chest ahead,"
right?
I'm gonna be disappointed.
Yeah, but you know, ask like what's gone wrong.
Where are our priorities as a society if that is not up at the top?
Well, we live in a time that's very fast moving. The world, I mean, just around us. Politically, things move fast. The news moves faster than it ever has. I mean, you can literally find out when something has happened in some small town, the opposite side of the world, 2 seconds after it's happened on, no, fuck that platform, on Blue Sky or on anything else. You can find it instantly. The world moves fast, and it's really hard for anything to like gain traction. So you need these things to hold on to. And if I can't hold on to "Try finger butthole," what am I? And what are we?
Words to live by.
I saw this one. It was a zombie game. I don't remember the name of it, but it was one that you can co-op with. And the guy was hidden, and he would have never suspected his friend was doing this to him. So that's what made it even more funny. But he had a motorcycle that he was trying to get away in. And he was sniping the tires. Every time he would fix it, and then he would like, okay, and then he'd like get behind, and he's like thinking he's being sniped, so he's like, shooting back a couple times, but he didn't know where it was coming from. So he'd get on the motorcycle, and just before he could go, he'd snipe the back tire. Couldn't go anywhere. And this happened over and over and over. And you could see, like, even though you can't see the person, obviously it's a video game character, you could see from his gestures he was getting so frustrated. Like, who keeps doing this to me?
I've seen a lot of videos like that of I don't recall the game, but it's one of those kind of battle royale kind of games, and specifically one where you kind of have like a 2-tiered health system to say, like, you have your normal health bar, and when that gets cleared out, you drop to like this revivable state, but you're not quite knocked out. And I just remember seeing tons of videos where somebody is sniping from a vantage point, and they're just constantly putting people into that first downed state, and then somebody will come over, pick them up, and then they'll try to figure out where they got shot from, and suddenly somebody's down again, and then they go over, revive them, and that cycle just repeats. And it's like, this is not what the game was designed to be ever, but this is so much better than what the game was designed to be.
But interestingly, that's the horrifying part of Full Metal Jacket. It's the very funny part of Fortnite. And that's what gaming really offers you sometimes. It offers you just something so weird and different. It's hard to quantify because, well, first of all, it's comedy. Like anything funny, it's hard to quantify. You can't say why something's funny unless it's a fart. But we all understand that that's funny and easy to quantify. But it just is. Let's be fair. But something like that.
Another Gamer's Advocate bold take. The only things that are objectively funny, farts.
And we all know why. But that doesn't sound funny. You know what I mean? Like, and if that was in the game as a design mechanic, where that was the intention, it's not funny. And if you're playing single player and an enemy did that to you, it's not funny.
Yeah.
But if you're the one doing that online to real people, it's really funny.
That's absolutely it. Like, none of these things inherently feel funny. In those moments where I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3 co-op and my friend says the wrong thing and suddenly we're in combat and I had no idea what was happening because I wasn't even watching that conversation play out. That's hilarious, but like that's not what was supposed to happen. That's just me trusting that my friend is not going to piss off the city that we're in.
Yeah, you mentioned Full Metal Jacket, and the first thing that popped in my head, and I thought you were going with this, was the dog with the eye patch, because I thought that was hilarious too.
Oh, that's Metal Gear Solid.
Metal Gear Solid,
Jacket.
yeah. It's
I was
like I
thinking,
said,
what the fuck is this?
that's my brain again. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
It wasn't Full Metal Jacket. It was Legion derailing everything.
Yeah, it was my
Get in,
brain again.
boys.
Way more acceptable.
Yeah, Metal Gear. Yeah, Metal Gear. Yeah, but yeah, I was thinking like the dog with the eye patch. Snake.
Yeah, but that's it as well, and that's a cute, funny thing where you'll see it the first time and you don't laugh, but you do smile because even though the reality is this dog has now been stabbed in the eye or something similar, so it's not great, but he's got the eye patch on, and it's really nice.
Yeah, I think video games also give us that opportunity to approach the things that are inherently just bad. Like they're not that there's not humor in an injured pet. That's awful.
Yeah.
And then you play Metal Gear Solid, it's like, hey, he has an eye patch. Like you can approach these things and turn them into comedy when they are not appropriate for comedy in the real world. And video games are kind of a unique way to do that.
The more you think about it, the worse. If you really think about it on just a sort of a moral level and how unpleasant this is, the more you do, the more the execution mechanic in Fortnite is grim as fuck. You have to beat an enemy and then go shoot them while they're down. That's how you end it. The more you think about it, that is vile. But you can shoot this cartoon character in the bum. So it's kind of funny. It just has a way and a
you
tone.
Could go over and gritty in their face while they're down. Like that's
Dude, you can.
That's a bit funny.
Yeah, and you could probably be dressed as Iron Man while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Like the endless string of absurdities make it okay in that moment, which is weird. It probably shouldn't be. What is so special about video games that let this happen? Because in anything else, I'd think that's really wrong. Is it the spontaneity of it? The fact that it's just someone has chosen to go and do this, whereas if that was in a film, they planned this, they've scripted it, they've written it, they've set everything up. Is it just the spontaneity of it being in a game, which is just, this is funny because one wanker's just doing this for no reason now?
I think a big part of it has to do with the fact that morbidity in games is never that serious. I mean, we were all upset.
Tell you haven't played XCOM 2 yet.
Well, yeah, because the game can't fucking launch.
Fuck you, Veraxis.
But like, we were all upset when Aerith died in Final Fantasy VII. But then when you watch that cutscene where Cloud lets her go, and somehow she sinks to the bottom of this 40-foot
This thing's fucking massive.
That Cloud was standing in, and it was waist deep 2 seconds earlier.
And he's gone as well.
Yeah, he's not there anymore. He should be treading water. That's not what's happening. He's just gone forever.
I don't think the cutscene would have had the same gravitas, would it? If he's wading out,
yeah,
and keep his head above water the entire time. Maybe that would have been better. Maybe this is.
But yeah, I think video games let you approach, especially dark topics, with an air of levity that like you can't get in other things. And it's because at its core, video games are always unrealistic. Like that's the nature of the medium. Even in those moments where the immersion is there and you really care, you can come back to it a week later and be like, shot Rex in the face. Time to save scum. Now Rex is alive again.
and that's it. Even in the most realistic, brutal game, you can restart it if you really want to. If everything has gone terribly wrong, every character has died, you've done terrible, terrible things, you can just restart. And you've got a clean slate. It's the most morally questionable idea I've ever heard of now that I think about it, that there is just this great reset button, but it exists. And therefore you can indulge all of those terrible base vices.
I mean, you're not wrong. It's pre-based.
Yeah. All right. Moving on.
I should have paid more attention, but I was watching football earlier and there was a commercial.
We were talking.
Yeah. I should have paid more attention because it's a fucking podcast and you're on
lost.
It was a commercial with the Final Fantasy with Aerith in it and a couple other characters. And I don't remember the context of the commercial, but at the end they were kind of like, join your friends and come with us. And I'm like,
she's still around. Shut up.
I've still got a save there. Shut your mouth. Shut your filthy mouth.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find that commercial because it actually seemed like taken totally out of context. But yeah, it was interesting.
But that game, oddly enough, is perfect. End of my sentence. Final Fantasy VII is perfect. It has a perfect example of that because Aerith's sacrifice is preceded by another sacrifice. Another character sacrifices themselves so that you can complete a mission. And without their sacrifice, you couldn't do it. The trouble is that character is a big stuffed cat.
Yeah.
It's a big stuffed
nobody even
Moogle
liked in the first place.
with a cat on top that can actually be immediately replicated 2 seconds later. So he comes wandering in the middle of the next scene, bouncing around. And you have this absurd situation where for a second you're really like, oh my goodness, I don't like him, but he's dead. Oh no, wait, he's fine. And his theme tune's really funny.
And that was absolutely that moment. It's built up as this big emotional climax where you're like saying goodbye. And it feels sad. And then he shows up 30 seconds later and you're like, oh, you asshole. I briefly cared about you.
And that's perfect. Like that is just one of those little absurdities of video games. And honestly, one of the main things to talk about funny video games about Final Fantasy and what I love about them is they are funny. Routinely. Those are games that have never taken themselves seriously, even in their most serious moments. So right now, I'm playing through Final Fantasy VI, and there's the big bad guy, Kefka. I mean, there's more, but Kefka is the big bad guy all the way through, who is very clearly evil, but he's so evil that it's just stupid. And he's got an evil laugh. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with the concept of pantomime that we have in the UK. He's a pantomime villain, and it's perfect because he's doing terrible, terrible things. And he's terrible. He poisons a river. Mm-hmm. But then 2 seconds later, he's doing his laugh again. Yeah. And now it's funny. And they have that wonderful balance they always have between just the absurdity. Balance might not even be the works. They definitely lean more into the absurd than they do to the tragic. But it makes all of these terrible events that happen in the game and these messages that you find in the games really palatable because of the way they dress them up in stupid jokes and stupid outfits throughout the entire series, like having that stuffed Moogle on your side, like having Kefka being as comically evil as he is, like having chocobos. We don't have to have chocobos, but the fact that we do and they can dance, it makes everything a little bit better.
Yeah, I think in Final Fantasy IX, where you're fighting Kuja and you learn like he's essentially plotting to destroy the entire world, and then you get that confrontation and somebody on your team is like, yeah, well, your tail looks stupid. Like, there are so many other things that you could insult Kuja for, and you pick the fact that he has a tail? He is objectively the worst person in the universe at this moment. And you're like, tail. It's so absurd, the things that they fixate on in those games, and like it makes it all okay. Because if I were genuinely like adopting the responsibility of facing off against this super powered, super knowledgeable character who is trying to destroy the planet that I live on, that's pretty heavy. But when somebody is like, you wear too many bracelets, like you accessorize a little bit too much for me to take you seriously, then it all feels okay. That pressure is gone. I'm just like, yeah, we can make fun of him.
And
Like,
that's what,
that's it.
and that's where also the same kind of line that Yakuza is so fucking great. The violence, it's hyper violent as a game, and the main storylines are drenched a bit more in that reality. So everything is a bit more grounded, not entirely, but it's a bit more grounded. It feels more real. When people die in that, they're dying. If someone gets stabbed, they're stabbed, etc., etc., etc. But then when you get into the fighting in the streets, just running around, it's the most WWE kind of fighting that exists. You literally do wrestling moves, you do suplexes and powerbombs, you swing bikes around, you hit people with vending machines. It's perfect. And then you've got the quest lines where you have to help someone be brave enough to face a dominatrix. It's just got that... God, the more I think about it, it's perfect. It's just got that wonderful balance, which I think video games, they are particularly good at. You can have this in any media, of course you can, but there's something about video gaming that is perfect for this shit. Because that's what it is.
I think BioWare does a really good job in their writing for the comedy, because I think of like in Dragon Age with like Alistair, like almost every scene Alistair is in, there's potential comedy. Not because of who he is, but there is that. You know, he's the reluctant hero, so there's always going to be something there. So he always like tries to make things less serious through his wit. So from the very first scene that you see him in, he tries to like, you know, wittedly get rid of the priest from the scene. He's like, oh, anyway. But there's a scene where like when you meet Morrigan, you know, we don't know who
Hell
Morrigan. Yeah, Morrigan, the Witch of the Wilds, and we don't know who's who. We don't know who our enemies are really, or who our friends are, and things like that. And she says, "Oh, you think I'm going to swoop from the forest line or something?" He's like, "Oh, yes."
Swooping is bad.
He is so good at, and that's just writing, and it's also the performance there too. But I mean, there's so many things that BioWare has done in their games that the writing has made the scene funny. And I've mentioned Baldur's Gate before with the Liar Core and, you know, Minsk and things like that. But even the entire Citadel DLC, it's just one line after another line after another line. And this whole, and we've talked about it, where the whole scene of Mass Effect is this end game type thing in Mass Effect 3. And here's Citadel sticking out like a sore thumb.
I think the Dragon Age example in particular is a great example of, I think, what makes BioWare games generally funny. And it's that the dialogue really isn't that great most of the time. The writing's not fantastic. The setups are fantastic. The world building is fantastic. The performances are almost always outstanding. But the writing has never been good, or really good. The clunk helps. There's something about it that is just funnier. Swooping is bad is an awful line. And I know it's not supposed to be a great line in the moment. It's a bit like the Tidus's laugh in Final Fantasy X. I don't care if it's pronounced Tidus. Shut up. Shut up. Tidus, his laugh is an awful scene, but it's exactly what a 17-year-old awkward kid trying to find a way out of this situation is going to do. It's not meant to be great. But the shitness of it enhances it. Dragon Age is Dragon Age. Dragon Age is the same. The clunky writing is just much funnier than good writing. And I think it's a weird thing the comedy often has to walk a line on, is if a joke is almost too well crafted. Not always true. There are comedians who defy this, absolutely. George Carlin always defied it. Stuart Lee defies it. A well-crafted joke can work, but sometimes crafting a joke very well but not quite well enough can be the biggest fucking hamstring for a joke ever. And you just lose it. That awkwardness in BioWare is just beautiful. And I don't know why Veilguard wasn't funnier. Because I don't mean this as a meme, but the writing was clunky.
Right. You're right.
The performances were great. It just wasn't that funny.
So many missed opportunities for somebody to look at Vorgoth and just be like, what the fuck are you?
Yeah.
That would have been amazing if at one point somebody was just like, are we not going to talk about this? Man is made of smoke.
Yes. And I think, like, Manfred, you could have done so much more with Manfred. I mean, yeah, Manfred was funny because he did his dance, but that loses its charm fairly quickly. It didn't overstay its welcome, because you have to go and initiate it and make Manfred do this. And he had funny moments, but they didn't use as much as they could have. Emmerich, I feel there's so much fun to be had with Emmerich. And we just didn't have it. And it's such a disappointment because it's that perfect BioWare setup. They just didn't quite get it right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just imagine like if you're like one of the best bands ever and you can be like full of confidence, right? But let's just say your opening band just nailed it, killed it. Like what you're going to have to bring it, right? But that's where I think they got stuck. It's like, we have to follow up 3 versions of Dragon Age before us and somehow sell it, even though we're going in a slightly different direction. I think they thought about that way too much.
These are the thing where they kind of get in their own heads during the design process. Yeah.
And I think that plays into that other aspect that we've talked about where you want to tell a good story. You want people to be immersed. You want to send a message about something that's important. And you almost get kind of too caught up in that and you forget the way that real life works. The way that even in those darkest times where everything is shit, somebody will have a stupid fart joke and you'll chuckle. Meanwhile, like, the world is ending and it's your responsibility to stop that from happening, but you still found a way to laugh in that moment. It's a tough balance to kind of approach. I'm not saying that BioWare obviously should have nailed it. It's super easy, but they've done it before. And that's where the disappointment comes from. It's like, you know what it's like to be in that situation. There's comedy in Mass Effect 3, and Mass Effect 3 is we're all gonna die, the video game. Like, you've done it before.
And that's what video games are theoretically so good at, is a long film is 3 hours long. It's not that much time to get away from the main story, and the side beats that you have tend to be quite short, and they've got to be highlights of the film because that's when we show the relationships between characters, motivations, etc. But mainly we're responding to the main threat. Video games are 30, 40, Railguard's 60, 50 hours long. That's not all story. It's time for side narratives, it's time for side quests, it's time for these little moments in between characters. And yeah, I agree at Weishaupt, for example, you don't want too much comedy there because what's the fucking point? That's not the thing. We don't want our comedy to take away from the big moments. We want the comedy in those light moments so that those bad moments hit so much harder. And they just let themselves down. And I don't really know where, because I don't feel they tried to not be funny. I felt they tried. Just a lot landed flat. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they had the wrong idea. It was pure practice that they failed at. It's such a disappointment in that regard. At least, and this is where that real 6 out of 10 game rating came from for me. It's not bad, but they missed on so much that could have made it special. Because that's the one thing it really lacks, is there's nothing special about it.
If we're talking about like more modern games, I was a little surprised that, believe it or not, Star Wars Outlaws, which a lot of people just did not like because mainly the mechanics, it's actually riddled with lightheartedness. There's a lot of moments where, and they kind of work because they're not meant to like make you roll on the ground laughing, right? They're just like little, very Han Solo-ish type things, right? But they nailed it with the writing on that. They actually did, because the Kay, the main protagonist in that, is often by herself or really speaking to somebody over the radio and stuff. Like, you're not going to come up with like the best one-liner of all time, but it actually some really good lighthearted way, even though you're in an element in a scenario that's very dangerous. They actually really did a good job of that. So I'll give them praise at least for that.
Well, you don't need most jokes to be outstanding. It's if you read a funny book, I mean, there's P.G. Wodehouse is one author where if I read it, I want to laugh constantly. I want to laugh out loud because the writing is astounding. It's just endlessly funny and genuine, just joke after joke after joke after joke. It's relentless. Most books that are funny aren't like that. You read it and you almost acknowledge that it's funny consciously, but you don't laugh. They're just very good. Amusingly written, well done. That kind of attitude all the way through. And that's what most jokes in a game should be. Because I don't need you to pull me out of it. I just need you to give me that moment of levity when I need it. And in something like Star Wars Outlaws, where I guess you are supposed, I haven't played the game, but you are supposed to play as a sort of roguish Han Solo type figure, right? Not Han Solo, but you're that kind of character. Well, that kind of character is built around quips. That kind of character is built around not taking things too seriously in the moment, and that's really the foundation of who they are. That's what it should be. And honestly, that game, weirdly enough, I heard a lot of criticism immediately after it came out. A few friends who I know have played it, and they all had a really good time. It's beginning to worm its way onto my backlog if I ever see it on a really good sale.
Yeah. It was hard to play from because it had a lot of like memory leaks and stuff. But now since they've redone it and there's been quite a few, it runs really well. But sorry, Banana. Sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. I think video games have. I think part of the frustration when they don't deliver on this is because we recognize just how much opportunity video games have to find humor in the way that they present things. If you watch like an action movie and you'll have those cliched little quips that the hero says after, delivering the killing blow to a bad guy, those became like their own meme and they're kind of funny, but like if you're trying to do a serious movie, they don't feel like they belong. And then you have video games like Duke Nukem where like that's the entire character is saying those stupid cliched unfunny jokes after clearing a room of bad guys. And it's the absurdity of genuinely thinking you're cool while delivering the uncoolest line ever. That's where the comedy is. So video games have more opportunity than a lot of other medium to really embrace comedy. So when they fail, it hits that much harder. Where it's just like, you had so many ways to go right and you went wrong. Like, how?
I think we all know the feeling as well. Like a joke falling flat, it's not necessarily painful. Like in a conversation, at least it happens, But if you've ever been to like a comedy show and a joke falls flat there, and the comedian isn't used to it, it's fucking rough. It's really rough because you're all left to settle in that sort of malaise that gets through the air and you can feel it sort of coursing down into your bones. I feel for some reason games it hits hard when a joke falls flat. I don't know what it is about it. There's no audience around me who's also feeling it. But when I see in a game a moment was supposed to be funny, if it doesn't land, it fucking hurts. And I just feel it right down in my soul. And it's being unfair because I don't get that with films. But there's something about me being personally involved in the game and me controlling the characters that when my character just... Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much.
It's also interesting because I think with video games, you still have that fallback that you have with other media to say that like watching a terrible movie, it's not supposed to be funny. It ends up being just a terrible movie. Then you have the entirety of Mystery Science Theater arising out of that, where these people were trying their best to make a great movie and they failed spectacularly. And now some of my favorite memories are from watching MST approach terrible movies and turn them into jokes. You still have that with video gaming. It's just if you're on your own, if you're playing solo, it doesn't work as well. If you're a streamer, it can be hilarious. If you're doing a Let's Play, it can be hilarious. If it's a co-op game and you can turn to your friend and be like, that was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Let's do it again. Like there's still that fallback for comedy, but when it's a single player game and you don't have that sounding board to be like, was that not the dumbest thing ever? Then it really, really delivers on that disappointment to be like, I can't even turn this into something fun because it's a solo experience.
Well, that's where as well, mentioning earlier that books don't make me laugh out loud generally because there's no one to tell it to. There's no one else who heard it. And honestly, there's nothing funnier when a good joke lands than other people laughing at that joke. The joke is funny, but people laughing at the joke is much funnier. Always will be. And like, I'm not even going to say I'll die on that hill. I think we probably all agree. It's much funnier. And
I will remain unthreatened on that hill.
I'll just be settling this hill for everyone else to come up and join me.
Yeah.
This is just something it's not there when you play on your own. And that is also the thing as well. Most video games do end up being a solitary exercise, and most people who play video games aren't streaming. Most people who play video games aren't playing multiplayer in the sense of interacting with other people online genuinely. Most people who play Fortnite, for example, are playing it on their own with others online, but they're not talking to them. There's no direct interaction. They're just 99 other players that you don't know. So you don't get to have that moment with them. And then, yeah, when something lands flat, it fucking hurts.
Well, I know one particular series of games that is intentionally meant to be funny, and it does succeed most of the time. And if you're watching on YouTube or listening on any one of our podcasts, you can give your comment about it, because I think I'm right. But our own Mr. BananaHammockRepublic, in my opinion, is a one-to-one Monkey Island game protagonist. Guybrush.
What do you call him earlier? Hairbrush to wood?
Guybrush.
Guy Hairbrush, I believe was the exact name you gave him.
Toothbrush something. Yeah. Every time I've seen the game or heard it, I was like, that's Banana.
Yeah.
How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
A woodchuck could chuck no amount of wood, since a woodchuck can't chuck wood.
But if a woodchuck could chuck and would chuck some amount of wood, what amount of wood would a woodchuck chuck?
Even if a woodchuck could chuck wood, and even if a woodchuck would chuck wood, should a woodchuck chuck wood?
A woodchuck should chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood, as long as a woodchuck would chuck wood.
Oh, shut up.
What a beautiful dress. I don't want to wear this right now. That's the second biggest X I've ever seen.
The legend of Monkey Island. You mean Governor Guyburst. But Threepwood's not set foot out of that mansion for almost a year.
Hey, what do you think you're doing? I told you no autographs. So I see you have a meet and greet ticket. And I guess it's not every day that you get to meet the mighty pirate Guybrush Threepwood, the legend of Monkey Island.
The mannerisms are totally different, obviously, but the voice is.
I will say there
Banana's
are
much more
definitely there are definitely lines in the way that they're delivered that I completely agree with you. I've definitely heard that kind of like sarcastic bite in some of the lines, but overall I don't hear the similarities. Admittedly, I probably don't hear my voice the way a lot of other people do, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hear it either, but honestly, literally every American sounds the same to me. I ain't getting shit from that.
I'm definitely one of those.
Yeah, boy, howdy.
Last time I checked.
That phrase that I've never said once in my life
on camera. The type of game that you just mentioned there, though, they were, to my mind, and this is definitely some nostalgia, they were of a golden age of funny games, genuinely funny. So you have things like, the Monkey Island series, just sort of take your pick from the Monkey Island series. You've got Sam and Max, which I think is outstandingly funny from time to time. Broken Sword, which is really fucking funny, particularly 1 and 2. And I guess it just goes back to what we were saying much, much earlier in the episode, of they didn't have much to work with, so they had to get that fucking right. If... I just blanked on literally every game in the world, and I couldn't think of one. If Resident Evil Remake tries to land a joke...
Fuck, no.
If Resident Evil Remake... No, wait, another game. Resident Evil 2 Remake. Tries to land a joke, and it doesn't land. It actually doesn't really matter, because the rest of the game's there, and there's the really cool zombie stuff, and there's the haunting, and there's the ambience, and there's survival elements, and there's the interesting normal dialogue between other characters, and there's the tension from that other person that you're looking for, and there's the puzzles, and yada, yada, yada. If a joke didn't land in Broken Sword, it's rough, because that is really all that's there, because all you're doing is combining endless items in your inventory and hoping that something works. And if we haven't got some funny lines encouraging me to try everything, I'm going to turn the game off sooner rather than later. Can you imagine if the insult sword fight in Monkey Island wasn't funny?
Yeah, no, that would have been rough.
Yeah.
And I think the Monkey Island games, Space Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, a lot of those types of games, really, they build off of a video game almost trope, but like the idea of the inept protagonist who's fumbling his way to success. That's inherently funny, and that's a great foundation to build additional humor off of. Yeah. I think the fact that like Roger Wilco or Guybrush Threepwood think that they're kind of awesome is a huge part of the success of those games, because it's so abundantly clear in so many different points in those games that they're not good at most of the things they're trying to do, and that's part of where the comedy comes from. And I don't know that that's something you can translate well to other things. Like, if you do that with a movie, it's exclusively a comedy movie. There's no branching into other genres. With video games, you could still have a very fun kind of action sequence in those games with an inept protagonist, and the gameplay could be awesome. It might be a great action game that has this funny element to it, whereas like in other media, I feel like you're handcuffing yourself to a specific genre because the medium's not as flexible as video games are.
Well, he's definitely not inept, but that's, I think, where a lot of the love for Nathan Drake and Uncharted comes from. Definitely not inept, clearly immensely capable, but also has that clumsy edge and that very unrefined way of being. And I think it's pretty simple, the inept protagonist and our adoration for them. It's because you only laugh at people you like. If someone you don't like tells the funniest joke in the world, it isn't funny because that guy's a twat. Like, you're just not going to enjoy it. If you think back to like the school bully, right? The school bully is going to say some jokes and people are going to laugh. They're not laughing because the joke's funny. They're laughing because they don't want to get beat up by the bully. I was an awful bully. I remember this really well. Okay, I wasn't. This is just something that you do to survive. But your friend tells the same joke and you'll laugh because it's really fucking funny. And nothing is more, what's the word? Endearing than ineptitude. Yeah. It's not a shortcut really to being loved, but it gets you on the way there at the very least. Yeah. So when you got Guyburst Threepwood and he's trying his best, you just want to root for him. And now you want to root for him, so you like him. And now you like him, so anything he says is a little bit funnier. And then because he's funny, you like him even more. And it just really gets these people on your side, and they're laughing at you for the right reason, which, again, in that like sort of bully analogy, isn't what's happening. They're laughing there because they don't want to get beaten up. Yeah. With Guybrush, we're laughing because we're just desperate for him to win.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, that element of relatability, because I think all of us know what it's like to not succeed at something at least once.
Have you seen Legion? Not a chance.
I think there's, with even the things that we're very good at, there was a period where we were not very good at them. So that effort to try something new and fail is relatable. It's endearing immediately because it's a shared experience we all have. So when you see a hero who's trying his best and not executing well, you're still kind of hoping it works out for him because he's trying his best. And then when it miraculously does work out, you're like, yeah, he didn't learn anything from this, but whatever, he won.
I have to tell you this one, because this is just exactly how I felt. So, in my course that I currently take, we have this one mathematics teacher, and he writes down the problems on the board. And then when you watch back the webinar later, which is what I would do, you watch the recording. He leaves every mistake in, every single one. And all of us love it because it's just really endearing, because it gives you that confidence of, oh, well, he's the teacher and he can still make mistakes. So obviously we're allowed to make mistakes. And just, it's a very humanizing thing. And then there's another teacher, another class. And this teacher leaves the errors in and then puts a quiz like, did you catch my deliberate error at 4 minutes 21? And you just think, fucking twat. You know, and I've got no affection for that guy at all now. None whatsoever. Because he's unable to accept that imperfection that makes the other so endearing. And I think Guybrush Threepwood in particular is so aware of his own incompetence that there's just so much to love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Guybrush is actually kind of that weird balancing act where they have that confidence that is completely unfounded, but it's presented to you in a way that makes him more likable.
Yeah.
There are those protagonists where they're immediately confident to the point of arrogance, and you don't like them, and it feels like that's almost where Guybrush should be, because he almost comes across as genuinely believing he is awesome, but it's so much of it that it's just like, oh, he knows. It's just this is the only way for him to keep going, being as incompetent as he is. Because if he were to just address reality pragmatically and be like, wow, I'm terrible at most things, he would just cease to be a character. You'd be handcuffed by this fear.
We still need him on this quest, but and that's where you see him as almost the direct ancestor of Nathan Drake. Yeah. There is that cockiness in there as well that lets them keep on going, accompanying their absurd lack of competence in what they're actually doing.
Yeah, the whole series, the games that are just kind of like Monkey Island, like the one you did recently, Banana, the Curse of Bonetown.
Yeah.
Forget the whole name of that one. It's just even the title of the game.
Yeah, Willie Morgan and the Curse of Bonetown. Your main character's name is Willie, and he goes to Bonetown. Are you kidding me? I'm 35 years old. I still find that hilarious.
The most fun I've had this year is trying to get my nephew to say out loud the name of the South Park video game, The Fractured Butthole. It's the most fun I've had all year doing anything in my life.
There's so many like happy accidents when it comes to video games, because like I said, sometimes they're meant to be written in, and other times it's just, the scene makes it funny. And I think sometimes the voice actors catch it, and a scene that wasn't meant to be funny is now funny. So it's pretty neat when you run into those. CD Projekt has a lot of moments with The Witcher that are just uniquely funny, that the scene itself is not funny, but it lends itself to be that way. So like there's moments where Geralt is incarcerated and they completely stripped him, right? And he's got to make, now a lot of games would have ordinarily said, okay, the way you get out is just a cutscene this way and that. No, they make you go through the whole thing. You got to fight naked. I mean, in itself, like I said, on the surface is not funny, but the scene around it is kind of hilarious. So this Witcher that everybody's supposed to, well, they want to make fun of him to begin with just because of the fact that he's Witcher. He's a mutant, but you actually have to fight your way out in your underwear.
Well, go back and look at Metal Gear Solid 2. Raiden's evasion maneuver is a cartwheel. At one point, he has no clothes. Did we change his evasion maneuver? No. He keeps doing the cartwheel, but with his hands over his junk. It's astounding. That's perfect. Why did we even bother making games after that? We could have just stopped.
Yeah, there's a moment in Cyberpunk 2077 where
at the No-Tell Motel.
Yeah, there's the No-Tell Motel. Yeah, that Com had no idea what he was in for at the time. Keanu Reeves' character is on the ledge, and you and I forget his name, are having this conversation while you're like scoping out Arasaka's warehouse and stuff. And he gets so bored that he just like rolls over off the balcony, like he's just like, but of course he's in your head, so nothing's going to happen to him, but he's like mimicking, he's so bored, there's nothing you don't react to it or nothing, you just have to see it when you see the scene. So it's immediately funny because that's his character, he's playing his character, but there's not even any dialogue in that scene. So it's pretty neat.
I also think we need to credit CD Projekt Red with all of the comedy surrounding accidentally romancing people. I mean, Com knows all too well how that works out. But the number of times in my playthrough of The Witcher where I'm just like, is this person going to have sex with me because I saved their child from a monster or something? What is happening?
Yep.
And the answer is they are. They are going to.
We are pretty charismatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wish it was less lecherous as the books, but the books are far more. Geralt is all over the place in the books, so don't even think.
Oh, that's pure wank fiction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like all these, like if you ever watch the TV series with The Witcher and stuff, like this evil witch or that one's doing this. Well, Geralt's been with all of them, every single one. Everyone that you saw in there, he's been with. So,
man, the author needs to rethink so many things.
Yeah. So when they start talking about lore,
do you mean
and this and
revisit so many things?
Yeah, in more detail.
Yeah.
Standalone books.
But, you know, this whole thing like Ciri's, you know, most recently, like Ciri can't be a Witcher and blah, 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 this and that. It's not consistent with lore. Did you even play the game? Because I don't even know if you read the book, if you played the games, because there's a lot of stuff that was left out.
Has anyone said that? Because I played the game for like once. It doesn't seem that weird.
I'm just saying.
Wasn't that the whole point?
I feel like this is almost that like one of those manufactured outrage things. Because I've seen a lot of people talking about like, if you're upset that Ciri is going to be the protagonist of Witcher 4, then you haven't been paying attention. And I haven't actually seen the people who are upset about Ciri being the protagonist, but I have seen the response to that outrage. And I was just like, maybe wait for the outrage to happen before you start addressing it.
And it starts now, down with Ciri.
Speaking of which, I am furious that Ciri is the protagonist.
Furious, I'm enraged. What are you, Legion?
We can definitely have a Witcher
moving on. That's
episode.
What Legion is.
But no.
But that also could just be like the circles in which I discuss gaming. That outrage doesn't exist there because these are people who have been paying attention, who have read the books or played the games all the way through to know what's going on with Ciri and Geralt, and they're totally on board with this. But like when the overwhelming majority of my perspective on this is people need to stop being outraged about this thing that I've not heard any outrage about. It's just like people need to stop being outraged about outrage because it doesn't exist. Apparently.
Oddly enough, my normal regular internet use, I have actually not seen even any negative shit about Veilguard. I had to go and look for it. I know this is much more prevalent, don't get me wrong. And as soon as you type it in on YouTube, it's going to be the first thing. Yeah. Whereas if you type in The Witcher 4, I doubt the first video is going to be Ciri shouldn't be the Witcher.
It's more on like other social media when you like Twitter and stuff because there's
then who gives a fuck, man?
Reddit.
Who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying that's where you'll see a lot of it. So.
Oh no, I'm agreeing with you. Like the who gives a fuck about them? Fuck them.
Twitter is the platform of shit I don't care about. So
yeah.
Twitter, Reddit, and all that. But anyway, coming back to comedy.
No, we're done now. No, but Twitter, I think you can very simply ignore. Just in life, it is the most useless thing in the world. Nothing good comes out of it. And honestly, I think my main issue with Twitter is if that was a real place, right? If you went to a public square and you were listening to everyone around you and that was the shit you were hearing, you'd fucking leave. You wouldn't hang around there all day listening to that bollocks. So why would you go on the fucking website? Nah, Twitter you can safely ignore. Are we going to get sued?
Nah.
I mean, we can only really get sued for slander if it's untrue. So I think we're in the clear.
Woo! Time for more bold takes. I don't like McDonald's. Yeah.
I feel like that's it 100%. The McRib is that chemical that's released in a pregnant woman's brain to prevent them from remembering the pain of childbirth so that they'll consider bearing children in the future. That's the primary ingredient of the McRib. I'm
not sure exactly why this came into my mind, but I just ended up on my favorite heckle that I've ever received during a Twitch stream. And this is a long, long time ago. And I've probably only been doing it for about 2-3 months at a time at a relatively small audience. And someone just came in and dropped one chat line, which I've never forgotten, which was just, "You've got shit hair and I hate you."
Oh, that was my alt account. Sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like that had to come from somebody who then went on to be a longtime viewer.
Lou.
Yeah.
Y'all have like a favorite one line or joke aside from the one you just gave? That one?
That, I'm done. You can't beat that.
How about you, Banana? You have a favorite joke for our humor podcast? episode?
Yeah, make us laugh.
Yeah, no, that's not why I'm here. I can't think of like any one line. There are those. I personally hate like formulaic comedy. Anything that like builds off of an established mode of telling the joke. So like I hate D's nuts jokes. I don't think they're funny. I hate your mom jokes. I don't think they're funny. But the I remember my first beer joke, when somebody does something that showcases they don't know how to handle their alcohol, or in the case of somebody who is just struggling with a game mechanic and keeps falling off a fucking cliff. Like I remember my first platformer game. That joke will get me every time. I don't know why, but it always, like, first of all, it always stings a little bit. But it's all pretty funny.
Honestly, there is something to the 3 or 4 sentence tip for Dark Souls that always ends with, and have you tried getting good?
Yeah.
That hurts every time. Confidence is in the gutter.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of funny. It shouldn't be.
We're on your mama's favorite audio platforms, which is iTunes,
probably true.
Amazon, and Spotify. I got it right this time.
And don't forget these nuts. Oh, fucking hell.
Com went there. Good job.
No.
You should be ashamed.
No,
Because
shame
even as
doesn't.
far as D's nuts jokes go, that was fucking terrible.
Fucking tenuous as well.
Yeah.
It hadn't even come up.
But the timing was awesome, so kudos.
No.
Yeah, your comedic timing, flawless. The actual content of your jokes, worthless garbage.
Another joke at that moment would have killed. It would have been.
Yeah, if somebody else had said something at that moment, would have been hilarious. But because it was you, not funny at all. Your hair is stupid and I hate you.
So when you catch next time you catch Com on stream, make sure you make that your comment. Inside joke for everybody.
Yeah, the next
did it,
time I
guys.
play Super Mario Sunshine, you can say I remember my first platformer, because I'm gonna die 400 times playing that fucking game.
Oh, you can play it right now. It's called Astrobot. But yes, we will see you next time, and hopefully, like, subscribe, and be sure to comment and tell us how much Banana sounds like Monkey Island. Man,
Perfect sign
Guy
off. Nailed
hairbrush.
it.
no problem. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. If the top comment for this video is not "your hair is stupid and I hate you," I'm going to be amazed.